Hi there! Tonight we're going to talk about making infused oils. You can purchase infused oils on the market. Several different places sell them. I, however, have found it so easy to make my own, and I want to show you how I make them using just two simple ingredients. Now, today I'm going to be making two infused oils. I'm going to be making some rose infused oils using these wonderful fragrant roses. These are just wonderfully fragrant. And of course, some of the most beloved flowers for infusion, calendula. So I'm really looking forward to showing you how to make these in a very simple way. Now, you will hear many different suggestions on the market. You'll hear people saying that they do them on the stovetop. You'll hear people using double boilers with glass jars. There are just so many different ways to make them, and I'm not suggesting that any of those ways are incorrect. I'm simply sharing with you what I believe to be a very simple and cost-effective way to make your own infused oils. When I make soaps, I try only to use my own infused oils. I make my own rose oil, infused oils. I make calendula, lavender. I've got chamomile, several different florals that I like to make them out of. I've made clove oil, which is just fantastic for soaps. I do one very masculine soap for a friend of mine, and I use a homemade clove and nutmeg infused oil. It's marvelous, and it's simple to make and fairly inexpensive compared to purchasing them. Now, I don't want to confuse infused oils with essential oils. Essential oils are made using a distillation process where there is a steam process used where in this case, the matter would be the flower petals, would be steamed and the essential oils removed. Very simple, or very similar, to the way alcohol is distilled. And this is it's a costly process, which is why you'll find essential oils are very expensive. But essential oils are much more fragrant. They have a much deeper, it takes a lot less of them to add a fragrance to either soaps or candles or whatever it is that you're using them in. Infused oils tend to have a more subtle fragrance. However, you can use a lot more of it because it can replace other oils in your soaps. So for instance, if I infuse this with a castor oil, whenever I'm making my soaps, that castor oil already has the wonderful fragrance of rose in it. And what could be better than that if that's something that you're going for in your in that particular soap that you're making. But I digress here. I'm going kind of off on a tangent. So anyway, infused oils. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to give you a few steps to doing this. It's very simple. So what I do is, I've already got 6 jars made up. I have one more to make up. So I'll just show you how I do this. Now, first of all, I want to show you one of the jars that I already have filled here. So this is filled with these calendula blossoms here. So I've simply put them in a small jar here. I have several of these made up. I have 3 made up with the calendula and 3 made up with the rose petals. And I have one here that I have not filled yet, and I think I'm going to do another calendula. And one suggestion I will give you about petals such as this, like calendula, where you've got these very small, very fine petals. Make sure when you put them in the jar, you can pack those in there because they're very fluffy. See, I put very little in there, but there's a lot of puffiness there. I'm going to pick out this stem here. That doesn't need to be in there. and just continue to fill the jar and pack it down. That's all I'm doing. I'm simply packing these down in the jar. And that looks good there. So now I've got all of my jars made up here. Now I want to show you what I do with them. So let me put this out of the way here. What I use is a yogurt machine. This is a simple Cuisinart yogurt machine. I think it was $24.95. I've had it for several years. I like to make my own yogurt. But it also does a tremendous job of making infused oils. It remains at a very stable temperature because it's made, after all, to make yogurt, where you don't want to kill the cultures by overcooking it. So what it does, it keeps the oils very warm. I generally leave these in here for 48 hours. Let the oils just warm and flow through the petals of the flowers for about 48 hours. Then I take the lids off the jars, and at that point I will simply put them through a strainer and put the oils into jars. Here, for example, is one of my jars that I have already jarred up. This is some chamomile infused oil that I did about a week ago, which is, I go through this stuff because I really like to use it in my soaps and creams, lotions. It's fantastic. All right. So the next step is to, of course, add oil to these. And I'm going to put just a few more roses in this jar here. I left this one a little lower than I meant to. Maybe a little more in this one. Clean up my mess in between. And now we're ready to add the oil. Now in this particular instance, I'm going to use, generally, depending on what I'm going to be doing with the oil, I will use, for instance, if I'm making a lip balm, well, I would use something like sweet almond oil. But if I'm making it for soaps, I'll generally use castor oil, because almost every soap that I make has some castor oil in it. So that's a commonly used oil, so I like to use it for that purpose. So in this particular example, that's what we're going to do. So let me grab my castor oil. All right, I've got my oil here, and now I'm simply going to fill each of these little pots with the oil. Pour it slowly, allow it time to flow down between the flowers. There, I think I've got a pretty good covering there. Now what you'll find happen is those flowers will start to puff up because they're absorbing that oil. So I just continue to add it. Oop, and try not to drip it. And then just go right around and fill each of these. And try not to drip it everywhere. So let me get a paper towel here. And that's just me. I'm just sloppy with it. Okay. Anyway, this is the process. You simply go around to each of your little pots, to your little jars here, and fill them with the oil. Now, one tip that I will give you that I forgot to mention. If you heat the oil a little bit first, stick it in the microwave for 2 minutes. Just get it warm. Maybe just a minute, check the temperature in 30-second increments, depending on the power of your microwave. But just get it warm to the touch. It will flow much more smoothly. Castor oil is a very thick oil, but that also makes it just a tremendous carrier for these fragrances. You're going to be just so impressed with the quality of the fragrances that you get out of these. What I like too, if I didn't already mention it, what I like about this little yogurt machine, it only has one setting on. So it's on or off. And so I'll generally set an alarm or just tell Alexa to remind me to check on these in about 48 hours. Although I do check them in between. I do. I'll, like tomorrow, I'll pull one of the jars up, I'll lift it up and just look at it, just to see how it's doing. It's kind of pointless in many cases. It doesn't really do anything. I think it just makes me feel better. It gives me something to do, I suppose. One other thing. When you're doing this in any type of a machine, such as a yogurt machine or anything like that, make sure that you keep this in a safe place where it can't be knocked over, because these are very warm oils. I don't think that they would burn. They don't get that hot, but just for safety's sake, if you have children or pets around, just put it in a safe place. Because you don't also, in addition, you don't want all of your precious oils to get spilled. These are valuable to you. And one of the things too that I like when I make something like this myself, I just have more of a sense of pride whenever somebody else uses one of my products. Someone uses one of my soaps and says, "That is the most wonderful smell. What did you use?" Because sometimes they assume that it's some type of a fragrance oil, such as a chemical reproduction oil. Okay, I might need a little more oil for this, it looks like. And it's something that I enjoy very much, being able to share with people. Right. So I'm going to just get a little more oil here. And by the way, you can mix your oils as well. That is really up to you. You are the chef of your oils here, whatever you do. People will use sunflower oil. I'm not a big fan of sunflower oil myself. It's a little too greasy to use, depending on what you're using it for. That's a big part of this. What's your intention for these oils? Because different oils do have different properties, as you well know. So once you have these somewhere where you want them, if you have them at a temperature that you're happy with, hang on one moment here. I'm going to just top these off a bit more. They are absorbing this oil as I had hoped they would. So I'm just going to go along and just top each of these off. They're about ready here. And I don't fill them all the way to the tippy top. As a matter of fact, I go to the neck, right up to the bottom of where the screw-on lid would go to I don't fill them all the way to the top. It just makes them easier to deal with later if they're not too full. You don't want to spill them as you're uncapping them and straining them later. Okay, these are full. Fantastic. Maybe a little tad more there. I probably have said a tad more several times here. All right, those are good. So now what I'll do is simply attach the lids to these. I don't put the lids don't need to be terribly tight on here. Just, you want to make sure that they're well seated. And now I simply put the lid on and leave it. And then in a couple days I come back and I will strain these and then pour the oils into some jars and they'll be ready to go. You could, by the way, you could leave them in these jars. If either these jars or any that you've purchased, for instance, I have some of these type little jars here that I could actually put in here. I couldn't put as many because this is a domed top, but I could put like 3 or 4 of these in there. But whatever the case may be, there are options available to you. You can use something like this very inexpensively. And it's something you can use for, if you like yogurt, there are other uses for the machine. I'm sure you can do a Google search or look on YouTube and there are 101 uses for yogurt machines. They're not expensive, and just for this purpose alone, it is worth it. I've made gallons of this oil and it just works terrific. Now, I will tell you that some flowers are certainly more fragrant than others. Roses, of course, depending on the variety of rose, is very, very fragrant. It depends on what variety you grow or if you buy them. If you're buying roses from someone else, it's going to be dependent on what variety they were, whether or not they were highly perfumed rose or some type of tea rose that doesn't have a strong fragrance. It really depends on the variety. Other flowers such as calendula, chamomile tend to have a more subdued fragrance. Something like lavender, those oils come out very fragrant, and the oil will take on a little bit of color depending on the lavender. I find that the gray lavenders tend to color the oils much less than the very blue lavender. The roses, depending again on the type and the color, may or may not slightly tint your oil. The calendula does. You get a very nice golden yellow tint to your flower. Sometimes it will have more of a rust color. It really, again, depends on the age of the flower, depends on whether or not you're putting the full heads in there or just the petals. So different things can affect either color or scent. But that's really it. This is not complicated. So in 48 hours, we'll open it up and jar them up, and this will be complete. So I hope you enjoyed this. There's not a whole bunch more that... Oh, wait. There is one other thing I wanted to share with you. What I've done is I dry orange peels. I'm a citrus freak, and I dry orange petals. And right here I have, for instance, some that I've got over on a drying rack. These are just orange peels. These are actually, I think these are like those cuties or something. I like citrus, so I've always got some type around. But I dry these, and I'll let them dry until they're very dry. These are still a little bit, still have some flexibility. I want them when they're crispy. So these will just dry on a rack. Once they're dry, once they've completely dried, I put them in a magic bullet that I have, a little grinder, which I'm sure you've seen in commercials or at Walmart. I don't remember what I paid for mine. I don't think it was very much. It was one of the early ones, and it's still great. Let's see if I've got it sitting right over here. I do. I'll show you the model. This is one of the old ones here, I think. I don't know what model it is, or if it's the MB 1001. Back when I bought this, I think it was about $20. I don't know what they are now. And then it came with several little of the cups and of course the grinding blade and those kind of things. But anyway, that's what I use. I then grind up those peels and then I store them. That's all this is just ground up orange. I think this is orange, lemon, and grapefruit in here. And this just has the most amazing smell. And you can take these and you can do the same thing. You can make infused oils with the orange, lemon peel. Now I do suggest you can do a citrus blend, but I like to separate them. So I've got a grapefruit infused oil that I've made, a lemon, an orange. So really let your imagination be your guide, because you can do all sorts of wonderful things. Some other things that you can do. You can, as I mentioned, you can do spice oils with various different spices and herbs. You can make basil infused oils, which are actually great in cooking. If you're ever making a pesto, if you have a basil infused oil and make it, it will just add a deeper, richer, more complex taste to your pesto. I could go on. Just want you to know that this can be a good investment. I don't make anything from the yogurt industry over telling you this. It's just I have found it to be an invaluable, very inexpensive, and very effective way to make infused oils. So I hope you have found this helpful. Leave a note in the comments or ask me any questions you might have, or even give me feedback. I really appreciate it. So you folks take care and have a great night.